Good evening. I grew up in Lansing, Michigan, and in the Midwest, you really have to, in a way that you don't in New York, you really have to work to assert your Jewish identity. Like in the Midwest, you can tell people that you're Jewish, and they just assume that you're also a Christian. Because in the Midwest, Judaism is considered like an accessory that you wear on top of your Christianity, really. And you really feel it this time of the year, you know, when people are like, you know, Merry Christmas, and you're like, oh, thank you, but I'm Jewish, and they're like, oh, okay, well, you have a good Christmas then. And you're like, oh, okay, but I'm Jewish, I don't celebrate Christmas, I don't have a Christmas tree, and they're like, you know, and you're like, no, I don't celebrate Christmas, and they're like, I can't comprehend what you're saying, I don't understand, and you're like, I'm Jewish, I'm not Christian, I don't celebrate Christmas, and then there's a moment where it drops down, you know, it dawns on, and then they're like all the color drains from their face, and they're horrified, they can't, and they're like, what do you do on Christmas? Well, one year I had it. I was like, what do you do on Shmini Atzeret? You know, what do you do on that's what I do on Christmas. So when I was a kid in the Midwest, one of the ways I asserted my Jewish identity was to go to services with my father every Saturday. And my father had grown up in Germany, and his father was a chazan, or a cantor. And what this meant was that my father knew, as far as he was concerned, everything about the way a service was supposed to go. And that was not the way it was being done in Lansing, Michigan. So I would sit next to him while the service was going on, while he loudly muttered a variety of things, like, I don't know why they're singing the Shabbos melody, you know, on whatever, on Shavuot, I don't know why that's happening, or why is it so slow? I don't know why in this country everybody thinks slow is more holy, you know, just like mutter like this, and, you know, this was, you know, I was Jewish, but I was from the Midwest, you know, which the bottom line in the Midwest is you do not raise your voice, you know, you do not draw attention to yourself, so I was always like, Dad, and he'd be like, what? Full voice, I'd be like, Dad, shh. You need to, he'd say, what, do you have, if you have something to say, speak up. And I'd be like, Dad, please. And he'd say, do you have something to say? Because we're Jews. And we get to use our actual voices. So, around the time 6 or 7, there was a major schism in Lansing, and a synagogue broke off from the synagogue that was there, right? Because this has to happen, because it's like that joke that I'm sure you guys know, that, you know, if there's one Jew on a desert island, there will be 2 synagogues, so that there's one that he refuses to go to, right? So we were in the breakaway rogue synagogue, and what this meant was we did not have, you know, it was about the building fund. Like, they were spending too much money on the building fund, and the people in our congregation wanted to spend more money on the Hebrew school, and so we broke away, rebels, we broke away, and we didn't have our own building, and we didn't have a rabbi or a cantor. The members of the congregation led the services, and needless to say, this suited my father perfectly, because he got to lead services the way he felt that they should be led. And his favorite service to lead was the Nila service, which is the final service of the Yom Kippur. Had a lot of opinions about how this should be done, but the basic thing was there were no shortcuts. Now, as I'm sure most of you know, Nila comes at the end of the 24-hour Yom Kippur fast. This is not some wimpy sun-up to sundown fast. This is a Jew fast. Do you ever have that conversation with people, non-Jews, and they're like, oh, you're fasting, and you know, they sort of figure it out, and they're like, what do you mean no water? What do you mean no water? What do you mean 24 hours? That's, you know, there should be a law against that, but no water, no food. Brushing your teeth is questionable. This is a serious Jew fast. So at the end of it, people are on edge, right? So my dad is leading the Nila service, and he has transported himself into a state of religious ecstasy. So he's up at the bima, and it's getting later and as far as we can tell, the sun's been down for about 5 or 6 hours. And there's a guy in the congregation who's like my father's nemesis. And his name is Murray Edelstein, and he is like a high-strung guy to begin with. And he hasn't eaten in now about 27 hours. And my dad is just like going, and he's getting more and more tense. And Murray's like, walking around the bima and being really passive aggressive, like banging. And people are, and we can smell the food. The women have set up the breakfast. We know that in the other room the women are like, screw them. The gates are closed. I'm done. Okay, so I hear you. Okay, so anyway, and my father seems to not be paying any attention, and everybody's getting more and more tense. And then from underneath his tallis, we hear the sound of my father's cranky voice say, "For God's sake, Murray, would you just sit down?" And I'm not sure what happened after that. I think I blacked out. So anyway, all right, okay. So years later, I moved to New York, and I'd grown up being like Jew. Then I moved to New York, and I was all lesbian after that. And so at one point, I decided, I'm going to go back into this world, and I'm going to go to the gay synagogue for the high holiday services. So I go with my girlfriend at that time, Peg, and my friend Mo, and they were raised Catholic, and they're like totally into it. They're so into it. Because they walk into the Javits Center, and there are all these people, and they're like, everybody's saying good yontif, and they're like, good pontiff. They thought they were so fun. And there's that thing in the service where the repetitive thing with like Baruch Shemo, where you say the first words of the prayer, and everybody mutters Baruch Shemo. And Peg was like, what are they saying? And I said Baruch Shemo, and she said, what does it mean? I said, what do you think it means? And she said, I think it means sorry about that, which is what a Catholic would think it means. So anyway, the service is going on, and after a while, I'm like, you know what? This service is over. I start to turn into my father, basically. I start to mutter, what is going on here now? This is just filler. The basic service is over. Why are we still here? Let's just speed it up, Why are they standing when they should be sitting? I'm convinced I'm an authority all of a sudden. And Peg is getting more and more tense. More and more, like this guy's making me right now. More and more tense. And she's like, but at some point, I just stand up and I'm like, you know what, we're leaving. And she looks like she's gonna die. And I'm like, we're not gonna sit here like a couple of Protestants, we're leaving. And we walk out, and we get outside on this sidewalk, and she looks at me and she's like, who are you? Who are you? And this is what I realized. Okay, so this is just, one second. All right. So, my friend Carolyn is a Unitarian minister. And in the Unitarian services, there's this thing that they say. They don't say, please rise or sit down. They say, stand as you are able. And I went to services at her congregation one time, and I had this realization. I thought, in a synagogue, you would never have to say, stand as you are able. Because if you said, please rise, and there was an old man in the audience who couldn't rise, he would say, I'm not able to stand. Halachic law forbids me to stand because I have a bowel obstruction. And what I realized is that is what happens to me and to my father. We were taken over by the little Jewish man that lives inside all of us. Thank you very much.